Hello and welcome to the Patreon only live chat. I do this the first Sunday of every month, but I have a bonus for this October. I chatted with my patrons and you all said you want some more live chats, but you don't want, to miss out on the other, resources as well. So instead of doing 2 a month, I'm going to every other month add a bonus one. So if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, this is a place where I welcome all patrons €3 and up to ask me anything about non-monogamy and polyamory. Tell me your story, let's sort through it. I'm polyamorous 12 years and hopefully my experience can be helpful. If you want to keep the chat going between lives, I offer pen pals on Patreon for €9 per month, where you can write to me anytime about anything, and I'll send a thoughtful, supportive response within 1 week. I'm also available for one-off video chats if you want an hour or half an hour to chat with me directly about your situation. You can go to chillpolyamory.com to see my schedule there. So happy to see you here. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm excited. I have this, I don't know if it's backwards. I have this new shirt that I had custom made. I thought it would be funny if it just said generic custom text. I actually have a couple of shirts that I post on my stories. There's this American Psycho shirt that I'm starting to stitch some hearts and rainbows and stars on, and I think it'll piss off a lot of the alpha bros, but but I just thought it would be funny to really girlify and Lisa Frank this up. And yeah, I have a few other shirts that I was like, I want some dopamine fashion. I want to pull a shirt out of the closet and just smile when I see it. So this is one of those. Super comfy too. Anyway, let's get to your questions. How do you deal with feelings of being, quote unquote, other, bad, and guilty? I find it worse than when I came out as queer. So let's jump right in, right? I think that it's very hard to break from the norm when you're not in a supportive environment. So I just want to validate that, right? Because if everyone is mirroring back to you something that is invalidating, if at every speed bump in your relationship you're feeling the feedback you're getting is, well, maybe polyamory is not for you, or maybe this is inherently immoral or inherently cheating, right? It is hard and it can be disorienting to have that messaging around us. And even if no one's saying it to you explicitly, like you said, you've got this guilt in non-monogamy, this guilt and this shame, which is very common because we've been absorbing that message, even if it's not been said directly to us recently. Every bit of media, every film and TV show and song and story example that we've seen of love has been a monogamous one for the most part, right? Unless you happened to grow up in a non-monogamous family, which is more uncommon, at least, in North America and Europe where I've been. And so I do hope that you're having compassion for yourself, that of course you would have that messaging. Of course you would have the idea that this is bad and wrong, but being other, being guilty, being a bad person, right? I think these might be separate things a bit. Being othered, then how I deal with that is I try to find people where I don't feel othered. And you mentioned that you came out as queer, so I imagine you might already have experience doing this, finding your people. Because at the end of the day, is anyone getting harmed? No, then you're not doing anything wrong, right? And a lot of people will see something non-normative, especially if it's challenging the idea of the nuclear family, and they will get aggressively hostile towards it, And so it's really important that we find each other, even if it's online, in a Discord, on a message board, places that you can feel not like the other, But in terms of feeling bad and guilty and shameful, having grown up in a very conservative environment with a lot of very sex negative messages, and a lot of really militants, absolutism. Here is what is good, here is what is bad in a binary way. I thought that anything other than, doing the relationship escalator and marrying your one person that you've ever had sex with, I thought anything other than that was the same thing as being immoral. And it wasn't until I started seeing examples of people not doing the nuclear family. Like maybe they weren't doing polyamory, but they were sure like divorcing and remarrying and having step parents, and there's 4 parents raising a kid, right? Like I started to see examples that were different than what I was told was the only one true path, right? And so that started to crack that a little bit, that message a little bit, because I'm like, well, they're happy, and actually it's better for the kids that they divorced because that was not a marriage that was creating a good environment for kids, right? Like when they added distance, a co-parenting situation became a bit more tenable. When they got remarried, now you have 4 parents and all of this like extra support. Theoretically, sometimes it doesn't help. It depends on who you add. But all that to say, go ahead and look for, even in monogamy, examples where it's bullshit. Examples where like that actually isn't a problem, If it's a matter of feeling shame towards your partner, like sometimes people feel bad, like their partner is struggling. I'm really guilty. I'm going on a date. They agreed, but I'm doing this to them. Why are they agreeing? Are you pressuring them? Are you coercing them? Be honest with yourself. If the answer is no, they absolutely want this for themselves too. And I've been transparent and I've loved on them as much as I can. Then their work that they are choosing to do, which can include some struggle, which big change is hard, their work is theirs, and I don't equate discomfort with like harm automatically, right? And so if somebody's upset, it doesn't necessarily mean you've harmed them, right? It all depends on the context. This is a 1-sentence question, so I'm a little all over the place because I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, but mostly I've experienced it be like this, right? So you'll have moments of reprieve where it's like, oh, I didn't feel shame this time, right? It'll be a little bit more like that. So we look for progress and not perfection when it comes to that, but keep talking back to the message. I'd say that's the number one thing, is to keep talking back to it on why it's wrong, why that's not who you are, why that's not what you're doing, how your partner did consent, so on and so on. And keep talking with people who get it. Without help, it's too much for us, right? We need each other. Okay. Question in the chat. I have a question regarding a mono-poly dynamic I'm in. I'm monogamous. The idea of my partner having partners is fine. But every time there's an actual date, I'm falling apart, even if I'm doing activities just for me. Any ideas of what I can explore to actually get my ADHD brain to stop obsessing over my partner and meta the whole time? And they go on to say it's exhausting. Yeah. So you mentioned ADHD. I'm not really a specialist, just like asterisk up front of what specifically would help, with your neurodivergence. So I often ask people, first, what do you already know about yourself? What do you already know about yourself in, like, if you're identifying some of this is related to just how my brain works, and now it's like working that same way in this area, what do you already know is a helpful tool, is a helpful resource to lean on. It can be a place to start, right? Because these are transferable skills in terms of managing, ourselves. So I imagine you're not going in completely unaware of what calms you down, of what validates you, of what soothes your mind and body, right? So starting with what we already know can be empowering, realizing how much already you do have available to you in order to calm down. Is your partner, are you clear on what it is that is dysregulating, right? So you said every time that there's a date or a meetup, you're falling apart, right? And I want to validate that is very common in the beginning, because we've not yet, I don't know if you're within the first year or two of this, you've not yet had a long-term track record of this being totally not a threat. So your body don't know yet that it's totally not a threat. So have compassion for yourself, because it's dysregulating. You can't reason with your body. It's looking for threats and trying to protect you, but it's, it hasn't caught up yet, I guess. But is there clarity on what it is that is setting it off? That can also be a helpful way to be a bit more specific about how you tend to it. So for example, if what it is spiraling about thoughts about comparisons between yourself and this person and how you're not enough of this or that. If the thoughts are about yourself or about your relationship, even with your partner, and a spotlight on everything you think that's wrong with it, that can happen sometimes. If that's the case, then we tend to it by validating you, by your partner loving on you, by reinforcing what already makes you feel safe in your relationship. What reminds you that she's not going anywhere? I'm sorry, I didn't see. I'll just say, what reminds you that they're not going anywhere? The security comes from the relationship that you're in. It doesn't come from whatever they're doing with somebody else. You know, security really comes from knowing that you're not going to be hit with surprises, you know, that you're not inferior, that you are loved, that there is time and attention and everything for you too, you know. So sometimes if that's where the thought process goes, then we can look at, well, what would reassure or even prove wrong that spiral, you know, and that becomes a bit more of a tailored care plan. But sometimes, you know, in a different direction, what is it that your brain is trying to resolve? What is it that your brain is trying to figure out? What is it that your brain is like trying to get to the bottom of, right? And this is not applying to like intrusive thoughts, for example, that would maybe be in a different category of thought. What is it? Can you engage with it, right? What is it trying to tell you? What is it trying to say you're scared of? What is it trying to say you need? Sometimes discomfort at how your partner is dating is a factor, right? It's not all, you know, up here and in your one-to-one. It can also be, is your partner, like, how are they doing it? How are they communicating about it? Are they coming home and going on and on about how great this person was? Are they, you know, not available for a lot of time before they go on a first date? And you're like, you would love some quality time just so you can feel, you know, the floor under your feet, that sort of thing. There can be care plans that you strategize with your partner that can make it more tolerable. At the end of the day, we want it to be more tolerable. We want it to be more tolerable until you get that track record, like I mentioned, you know, until you have time under your belt of actually being safe, of this not being a threat. And then you start to notice that it's not a threat. So pay attention to progress, pay attention to, is it better this week than it was last week? Okay, why? What did we do different? What helped? And you will learn a lot about yourself. If you're really wanting this and willing to do this work, it can be revolutionary in my experience of like actually confronting all of the things that maybe we weren't prompted to confront or forced to confront before. And I found a lot of healing in doing this work that you're describing, but it is not fun. Someone in the chat says, I want to encourage to give it time too. It just gets easier. I'm a little over a year in and it feels normal. There you go, right? And this is also why we need other people, right? Because we can reassure ourselves, our partner can reassure us, but that only goes so far. We need role models. We need friends who've been there. We need people who can tell us what they've seen and what they've tried. And at the very least, you know, commiseration too of like, oh yeah, that sucks. Okay, let me distract you tonight, you know? It's like, yeah, it does get better as long as agreements are not broken, you know? If you do want this, if generally the concept does not bother you, I promise it does get better. But this is a big change, and big changes are hard. Anyone has questions, you can put in the chat. Okay, I'll go to a submission. How to support a partner through a breakup of a serious long-term relationship. I didn't really like my meta, and I'm actually feeling guilty that I am glad that they are broken up. So I'm not quite sure how to support them when they are in distress. Yeah, that. What a real thing. A lot of times we aren't clicking with our metas, right? It's like, I wouldn't choose to bring that person close, you know? We choose our people, we don't choose our people's people. And autonomy has also included me stepping back and being like, they're not asking for my opinion. If I see something really like abusive, right, that's a different story. But if it's just a personality thing and I'm like, I don't like this person or whatever, then I will say, I don't want to be around them. I don't really react well for this reason or that reason, but the rest of it's not my business. What you need to explore or learn, like maybe there's a lesson that they're searching for in that dynamic that they need, like I don't know what's best for them. I don't always know what's best for me, so like I want to let go. And it's not that I completely withhold my own reactions or hide my own reactions, but I don't use those reactions to try to tell my partner what to do. They can take in that information. I set my own bounds of how close or far I want to be and so on. But sometimes when that's in the mix, you said you didn't really like your meta, and then they do break up, that can be really hard. I don't know if you mentioned like feeling guilty at being relieved. I think that's perfectly human response. We are relieved when stressors are removed. It's very common, and I think it might even be a part of grief sometimes, especially if there's like a long struggle, a long pained struggle, and it ends, there's grief in the mix. It's a new situation now, and there might be relief that the long struggle, is finally at rest, one hopes. So, are you comfortable sharing with your partner that you aren't really clear on your own limits, that you don't know if you're the best support person for them? Are you comfortable supporting them to get help from other people as well? If you don't want to know the details, or if it would be counterproductive to know the details, like, can you just not hear the specifics of whatever memory they're having or whatever, rant they're wanting to go on? It's like, hey, I think I'm going to get pissed if you go on and on and on about what they did, because I already don't like them. And I want you to have space to vent. Like, can you just tell me how you feel? Can you say like, I am so angry, I am like spiraling, I'm lost, I'm, or I'm just realizing I was done wrong. It's like, there are ways that we can support our partner with their feelings that are not necessarily getting into the minutia of what that relationship was. But for the most part, I try not to compartmentalize so much, but I try to just name what feels like are my personal limits before I start to be not okay, before I start to be, just like angry instead of feeling compassion for you, or pissed off at you that you didn't leave sooner, right? And that's not helpful to you while you're in grief. So like, I'm okay, I'm not okay. Where's that line? And sometimes you stumble into that, or sometimes you have clarity from all of the events thus far of what you definitely don't want to know about, of what you definitely don't want to be a part of. Pain points for you. I don't know what your situation was with your meta, if you had your own conflicts directly with them. Yeah, at least that's how I do it. I can't remember what we said, but on the most recent episode of I Could Never, the bonus episode for season 1, we also talked about supporting a partner through a breakup. So if what I said didn't touch on what you were looking for, go to that podcast episode. I think it might be towards the end of the episode. We do discuss that as well, so there might be more there for you. It's always tough because I do appreciate shorter questions. It does open the door for like, oh my God, I have so many follow-up questions of like what your situation is. And so I'm hoping that this will be helpful or speak to at least part of what you're experiencing. Do you have your own support network? Rely on your own support network. Know your limits. You don't want to get burned out trying to help them, right? That doesn't help anybody. It's a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to grief. Next question. I always hear polyamory as the quote-unquote solution for asexual / non-asexual relationships. How to know if I'm doing it for the right reason? Yeah, that's very much a thing. Like, if an asexual person is in a monogamous relationship with someone who does want sex, or does like have, a rhythm of sexual appetite, that can feel very not aligned. It can put pressure on it, right? Like, I'm not asexual, so I can't speak to that experience. But a lot of my asexual friends like do play and do have sex. Like it's, it's not like desire, but it is like wanting intimacy, right? So it's not, when people say, oh, this would fix it, like I don't like the implication that it's broken, I don't like the implication that this has to be a problem. And sometimes within monogamy, people will hire sex workers and still under the umbrella of their agreements in monogamy. That is, in line with their agreements. It's not considered cheating. It's not considered, outside the bounds of their marriage. So like, there's so many ways that can look that monogamy is valid. All that to say, does it feel like a problem to you that needs fixing? Does that resonate? Does that feel valid to applying to your situation? I don't know, so only you will know if that rings true as like, this is not aligned, something is not working here. So yeah, I mean, how to know if you're doing it for the right reason? What is the right reason? Like, how do you define the right reason? What is a motive that you would stand by, that you would say with your full chest that that's a good reason to do it, or that's a reason I support? What is that for you? If you can name that and then sit with it, is that your motive in part or in full? Is any part of you wanting this for yourself? Because non-monogamy, if it's just about sex, non-monogamy can also be a discussion, like as a broader umbrella term under which polyamory lives. Non-monogamy can look a lot of ways, including having friends with benefits or sexual relationships only, swinging, things of that nature, just going to parties, sex parties. So what is it? What is the goal? Ask yourself those questions, talk about that with your partner. It might not be all or nothing. It might not be binary, some of it might be, well, I want my partner to be able to explore this even if I have tension about it. Like, okay, is that what you want? Or is that coming from a place of fear? I usually try to notice, is there fear? Is there emergency, in your decision making? Then I try to pause. If there's fear, if there's emergency, if there's reactivity, if there's just trying to prevent something from happening rather than aiming at building something new. What is this new thing you want to build? Can you imagine what the new kind of setup would be? What are you going towards rather than moving away from? Can also be a way that you imagine yourself in this new scenario, and like, do you like what you imagine? I don't think that there's like a universal good reason or right reason to do something. Sometimes people are just fucking curious and they're like, I don't know, I want to see what I see. Okay, tell people that. Just tell people where you're at. This is where I'm at and I might not want this. I'm just playing around, experimenting, or, as long as you're being upfront with your potential partners, with their potential partners, managing everyone's expectations, then yeah, it could be fine. It's perfectly common to try other relationship models on for size to see what actually feels right, So I'm not a purist, I guess, when it comes to that question. Next question. I'm interested to talk more about triads and thruples. I currently am in 3 of them. Oh, wow. And I really love it. Okay. It's not really a question, but I'm happy to, in general, I do want to include more conversations about triads because it is a very complex kind of dynamic that a lot of people try to get into first. And I think there's a lot of resources out there that are like, here's if you are new, here's if you're thinking of joining a couple to form a triad. Like there's a lot of, if this is your first time or if you're brand new, like here are some resources which are very needed. And sometimes people they jump in and then they're just in this, and maybe it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing of like throwing everything away, but they need help with the complexity of it at that level, 1 year in, 3 years in, right? And there's not a ton out there for that. So I actually got an email from a patron about this as well, but more more in relation to the podcast, saying I would love to have more, deeper conversations about triads. And they had been doing polyamory for like 20 plus years, and they were in, I think, 2 triads, and I was like, would you like to come on the show? So maybe we're going to invite that person on. So I want to give more examples. I personally have not been in a romantic triad. I do think some of my configurations have had the same dynamics as triads, like friend configurations, even professional or creative configurations. I've had to learn some throuple lessons, in terms of like power dynamics and not triangulating, not sending messages through each other, not venting to one person about the other, and like, roping someone into a conflict that doesn't have anything to do with them just because we're all 3, on the same team, that sort of thing. That is part of the complexity of having this 4 relationships. Some people say 7 relationships, the 3 dyads, the 1 triad as its own separate dynamic. And of course, your relationship solo, your relationship to yourself, or your relationship like dating elsewhere, right? Like your relationship to polyamory as someone who's not in a polyfidelitous triad or a closed triad. So those are a bunch of different, subtly different dynamics that all are going to do their own thing. And some have staying power or will last for a long time. And some you realize, oh, this needs to kind of change shape. Like maybe I don't want to have sex anymore with one of my 2 partners. Okay, let's talk about that. Are we still considering it a triad at that point? Like different relationships are going to change and evolve at different paces in different directions sometimes. And that is really tricky to navigate. So all that to say, there wasn't really a question in here, but I do agree I want more resources out there for that kind of dynamic. So I'm already working on finding people for season 2 of I Could Never, to hopefully give some more practical examples of how that can look, especially long term. Okay, next question. How do I help the eager total newbie to non-monogamy that I just started seeing? Or is that a red flag? Would you not recommend it? So I've made actually a few videos on this. Obviously not comprehensive. When they're on TikTok or Instagram, it's like 1 minute long and people are like, you left out some nuance. I'm like, did I in this 1 minute video? Are you sure? I try my best. I try my best to consolidate into like a bouillon cube all of this, topic. But when it comes to someone with more like time in this space or more experience, time doesn't always equal experience. Experience does not always equal like that they're doing it in a respectful way, that they're doing it in a, like collaborative way. Plenty of people will do this for like 10 years and be selfish about it. And it's like, experience doesn't mean you're going to have a good time dating them, right? Or that they know like what they're doing, supposedly. So speaking to that and like the power dynamic that creates, but then also there's a vulnerability to someone who knows that they're non-monogamous, really opening up and welcoming close somebody who is new or may not be sure, or is going through that first, we were talking about it earlier, like in the beginning, there's some upheaval, it's a big change, and you're kind of along the ride for that. So I don't really see it as automatically like a red flag. Why do you think it might be a red flag, right? Like what comes to mind for you if you think that this is a red flag? Why? That's my first question, right? Say more, because if you're picking up on something isn't right, this is like a ticking time bomb, or I can't do this, right? If I'm a firm believer that we have a lot of the answers already inside of us. So that's why I ask a lot of questions, like especially in my one-on-one chats, I just ask a lot of questions. I'm trying to help you find what's already in there, what you already know to be true, right? So if you sit still with yourself and you're really thinking like, why am I asking if it's a red flag? What did they say? What did they do? What did I feel? What did a friend tell me that it was a red flag, right? Why? Do you want to still move forward and talk to this person? And do they want to move forward? Just because they're new in a non-monogamy doesn't mean that they're new to life, doesn't mean they're new to complexity or new to relationships. Plenty of newcomers, they might make classic first, missteps, but they've still lived, so like I don't infantilize a newcomer, right? Right off the bat. I don't assume that they know nothing. Like can you talk to them and see like what are the risks here of us getting close to each other? And like I said, a common risk for someone with longevity or somebody who's very certain that this is who you are is they could always realize this isn't for me. They could always realize I tried this, I'm exploring this, and I'm good, bye. And that can be really jarring. That can be upsetting. And even if the person did not intend to treat you like an experiment, sometimes that can be the residual feeling is like, was I just part of their journey of self-discovery and my needs didn't matter, It's like sometimes that can be the other side of what people get to. Or sometimes, someone with 3 years and someone with 6 months, then they keep growing together. And now there's someone with like 8 years and someone with like 5 years. You know what I mean? So it doesn't mean you're going to grow in a apart. It doesn't mean you're going to grow apart. It doesn't mean that there has to be that this dysfunction automatically just because they're new. But I would say I am always very mindful about power dynamics, because when somebody is newer, a lot of times they will lean on their partner with experience and say like, what do I do here? That can be dangerous. That can be dangerous. If people are not, like, you're asking me this question, so I'm going to assume you're trying to handle this mindfully, right? But some people are not really thoughtful about it, and they're like, yeah, I do know what we should do, and they're directing, while we're in conflict, you're actually wrong, I'm right, I've been around longer, see, I know, that's some bullshit, So like, I try not to have our partners be our mentors. Man, that can get messy. That can be conflict of interest. There could be an incentive to misguide them against their own best interests if it serves yours. Not that you would, but in a hard moment, is it possible that you might be tempted, that you might have the thought? Can you support them to get their own support? Can you support them to discover whatever is within them? But there can also be like wrapped up in that, if you are trying to handle it mindfully, this sort of treatment of like you're not allowed to have problems because you've been around longer. I've gotten that before. It's like the new person is struggling and they are like, well, I'm the one struggling. Like, you're not supposed to struggle. You're not supposed to, misspeak or accidentally hurt me, or, you're not supposed to fuck up. You're the long timer. And I was like, I'm a person. We're in relationship. The longer we spend time together, I'm gonna fuck up. Like, I'm gonna have lessons I'm still learning, right? Like, I don't want to be pedestalized because I'm gonna fall off that pedestal, right? I've talked about that often. I don't want to be seen as like this platonic ideal of what polyamory should be, because that takes away a person's three-dimensionality. And so it's important for both of you to remain peers, even though the experience level is different. Can you still work to remain peers and remain three-dimensional? And is there space for both of you to take up? Even if one person needs to take up space more often, if you're having a bad day, can you still talk about it? Will they be there to support you too? So keep noticing, keep asking yourself questions and seeing what your own reactions to things are. And I hope that it will become clearer for you soon. Okay, next question in the chat, potentially stupid question. No, it's not a stupid question. What are classic missteps of a newcomer? So stereotypical, right? Like, not everyone who's new will do stuff like this, but not understanding, like sort of having an assumption of this is what polyamory must be, assuming this must be okay. Sometimes people come in and they're like, oh, we agreed we'll be polyamorous. I'm going to just go fuck a bunch of people, and like come back and be like, why are you mad? I thought we were polyamorous. That's an extreme example, but like, like not malicious, not even trying to be deceptive or dishonest, just like not aware of even the questions to ask, even the conversations to have, because they're new, because they've never been in this space, right? And I think it's fair to be new and like what I was saying is it can be a risk with someone who doesn't know what conversations to start, because then a lot of times there's like learning the hard way and trying to backtrack and say, okay, next time let's have a conversation before you go have a lot of sex of safety measures and like what I might need emotional support or reassurances or whatever, every dynamic's going to be different. But, I shared once about a person who was relatively new, and I started dating him because we had been friends for like 10 or 15 years, something like that. But he was very new to polyamory and assumed that he could just send me a graphic video of him with another person. And I was like, what? Like, I'm now harmed, but now I have to teach you too. Like, I need to be the teacher when I'm actually the one who needs care. So it can be something like that. And common sense is not so common sort of thing of just like, there's no role models. There's really no role models. We're getting better about that. That's why I'm also doing the podcast and doing the YouTube and everything like that, is like, I want to show more examples, even if they're messy, like just so we can not walk in with like some sort of assumption of what this means and what we've agreed to. People will say, oh, I agree to being a secondary in a hierarchy. I agree. Not really knowing what that means. Would they agree to being vetoed, for example? Would they agree to not being considered in major life decisions, and their partner's just like, oh, hey, my wife and I decided we're going to move, like, what? But you're a secondary. You agreed to being a secondary, right? Like, they don't know what to ask. And I think that can create a power dynamic as well, with like the person with more experience being expected to fill them in on everything. And sometimes people will misuse that power that is given to them and say, well, this is the right way to do polyamory, is my way, and again, so that's why I encourage people to encourage their newer partners to seek out support, to be reading the things and listening to the podcasts of all of the people. And like, I encourage them to encourage their newer partners to have community and pursue community as they discover what they need to discover. At the very least, if you have a problem with how they are in new polyamory and you don't have the bandwidth to support them because you're the one that was just injured by their actions, if they have support outside, they can at least turn to them and be like, what did I do wrong? I thought I was, and work that out over there. I cannot be your emotional support or your taking you under my wing when I'm reeling and recovering from what you just did, sort of thing. Not knowing. And we accidentally hurt ourselves all the time, even while being communicative. But I think a lot of people fresh out of monogamous dating scripts will assume, oh, well, this comes next. Oh, well, we're on our third date, so we're going to have sex now, right? Like, assumptions. There's so many assumptions that monogamous culture teaches us that they also haven't like questioned or challenged. And so at this point in my life, I would need to know someone for 10 or 15 years to make that worth it, to be like, you are worth it. But I don't want to date just anybody who is new to this, not just because this is personally my job now to support people, but also because that you're along for the ride of them learning the ABCs. Again, not to patronize, but just to be realistic about the tools that they have practiced using in this way. Next question. How do you navigate the ebbing of a connection you have with an established partner when they start investing and are excited about new connections? So this sounds like a longer term or a mature relationship and then new relationship energy. I talk about it like, hey, I've noticed I'm feeling this. We start there. We start with, oh, I'm missing you, or oh, I've noticed like some feeling of ache or some feeling of lack. I've noticed I started comparing myself to my meta, and I normally don't struggle as much with that anymore. Why am I comparing myself to this meta and I haven't with past metas? Now, some of that could be this particular meta has set off something in me, and that's a separate issue. But it could also be the way that my partner is behaving towards me since this person came into their life. And now my brain has associated their treatment of me with the existence of this person in their life, right? And so really the ask is of my partner, can you do something differently? Can you treat me differently? Can you I want to be the fun one too. Can you do fun, new, creative things with me too? You know what I mean? Like, I encourage hinge partners, especially when they are really excited in new relationship energy, to stay sober, basically, and mentally of their current commitments. I'm so glad you're getting high on all these other people. Also, your current commitments stand, and we can't leave them behind. Otherwise, you might like come out of this fog of new relationship energy to a pile of wreckage that everybody is pissed at you or leaving you or whatever. Like, you're maintaining current commitments while excited, and it's not fun. It's like even counterintuitive to bring ourselves down from that high, but we're grown, and we are committing to multiple people. So we got to be grown about that. So sometimes novelty can help. Like sometimes, new energy in your dynamic can help. I encourage hinge partners a lot to double down on the effort in the short term, right? It's going to feel like more work in both directions because it is. But if I'm doing a lot over here, can I also do more here to prove that my relationships are not in competition, right? Because sometimes accidentally, if we take from over here to give to over there, that can create this false narrative of scarcity and competition. And if you're realizing you don't want as much over here, that's a different conversation. If you're wanting to restructure your relationship, have that talk. Don't just like do it, But if you are wanting things to stay solid while you explore this new thing, then show that addition is not subtraction, right? That addition can also be addition, And, so that's really only during a period of change. You don't have to like keep up new relationship energy effort everywhere. But I don't really, I think just going hard with loving on your people extra, abundance, everywhere. So, yeah. See if it's a restructuring. If it is a restructuring, then that is its own conversation. But if you just want more novelty, more play, more life poured back into your connection, then you can ask for that too. I think that's fair. Okay, next question. Okay, so I'm being compartmentalized by my partner as they create their perfect polycule. How do I ask to be considered? How do I ask to not be? And then it cuts off, but I think they mean not be compartmentalized. So as they create their perfect polycule. So I take issue with people who have a picture in their head of how it should look, and they try to put all the pieces in that order, and that's not a collaboration. I love imagining something new. I was talking about that earlier. Let's imagine what we're going towards. Let's, but is it a collaboration? If you already have people in your life, if you're single or solo and you're like imagining that because whoever enters, you'll figure it out when they enter, that's different. But like if you already have people embedded into your life and you're like, okay, so this one, I'm going to put in this box over here. I'm going to see them, every Thursday, and I'm not going to, welcome them into a kitchen table dynamic. Like, is that a conversation? Because this person is building their perfect polycule, the person said, perfect for whom, perfect for your enjoyment solely, meeting your needs solely. I'm talking to the partner who's compartmentalizing here. I think it's perfectly fine to realize, I don't want kitchen table polyamory. I don't really want to all hang out. I don't desire that. I don't really want to see you all the time. I'm sorry. I'd like to see you every other week. How do you feel about that, right? Wanting different things, that is its own conversation, right? Like if you want different things from them and it feels like you're being compartmentalized, is that something they've explicitly said that they're doing what they said that they want, and it just hurts because it's not what you want and it's just a mismatch, right? And that's a hard conversation to have, but I don't try to push people to act as if they want something that they've said they don't want. You know, maybe to avoid losing you, they might act differently for a period of time, but is it what they want? You know, because they'll go back to what they want eventually. But yeah, if they have not had that conversation with you, if they're just like all of a sudden changing how they treat you and changing where their priorities are, and it's not been a collaboration, yeah, I take issue with that, because what are we doing here if not co-creating something together? You know, we cannot land on a perfect vision without factoring in everybody's wants, needs, requests. Doesn't mean everybody gets what they ask for, but we factor it in. They're at the table. They're figuring it out with us, right? And if that's not happening, if it's all being done in here, especially just by one person, then it's like, are we even in a relationship, or am I being objectified as a function in your life? I am the play partner sometimes. Well, I thought we were dating. Why are you treating me like a play partner sometimes? You know, that should be a conversation, you know, because if you were to ask me if that's what I want and I don't want that with you, then I get to opt out. Sometimes people don't ask because they don't want the answer. If the answer is no, they want you to be a play partner sometime, you know, in this example. So if you're feeling uneasy, if it feels like there needs to be some clarification of, are we on the same page of what we want with each other, then have that conversation. Yeah. And if you don't want to be compartmentalized, you know, some people love compartmentalization. Some people need it for various logistical reasons, or for their job, or they're not out to their family, or there's various pressures pushing on us that might lead to someone having more like separated tracks of their relationships for a time. But if their partners don't care, if they're like, yeah, that's fine with me, great, then that you can do that for years then, right? But if that is not something that you want for you, or you imagine for your future, then how could you possibly be building the same thing if you have two different futures in mind, you know? So talking and getting on the same page of what you imagine for yourself and each other, what they imagine for themselves, and you and them. Is there any overlap of that Venn diagram of like, oh, well, we both do want this, let's keep doing that together? Great. But I don't really want to do this rest of itemized list of things that you think it would be perfect if I did with you, right? So you have agency in this. You get to decide what you participate in. And if something is not meeting your needs, or if something is just not satisfying or not comfortable, and you're just going to be unhappy, you don't have to take crumbs. You know, you don't have to take crumbs from someone that you want a full meal with, you know? So if some people are like, I only want crumbs with that person, they only have crumbs to give, amazing. But if that's not working for you, then don't ignore that either. So again, only you will know that answer. Maybe it can be cleared up in a conversation. But if it is a fundamental incompatibility of what they're able to give you, if it will always hurt that they're not giving you what you want them to give you, then do you want to be in a situation that always hurts, you know, or always feels like you're settling, or like it's not enough? Because you deserve to be in a situation where like the people you bring closest and build something with are so excited to be there and do that same thing with you, that you're building the same thing, that you've talked about the same future and you're headed towards there together, you know? Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got 2 more minutes. Let's see if I can get a quick question in. I might be optimistic here. Okay. Sure. I'll try and touch on this one kind of quickly. Is it common for one partner to be monogamous and the other be polyamorous and have it work out okay? I'm choosing this one because we touched on monopolyam earlier, and I am actively looking for some monopolyam stories to be telling, hopefully in the near future, so that there can be some examples. It's not just all theory or hypotheticals. Absolutely, monopolyam, I've seen it work. I've seen it be sustainable. The person who asked a question earlier who was like, yeah, it doesn't bother me that my partner has other partners. I feel a bit dysregulated before dates, so I want to sort that out. But the concept of it, totally fine. Great even. Sometimes a monogamous person is like, amazing. Please, I want you to have, some more of your needs met elsewhere. I would love more alone time at home or whatever it is, right? Sometimes it is the perfect fit to have the relief of not being someone's everything, this pressure that gets put on monogamous people. And to realize, I only want one partner for me. I don't have the desire or bandwidth for multiple partners, so I am monogamous. Sometimes people say, oh no, monogamy means your partner's monogamous to you. I'm like, that's a monogamous relationship. Yeah, but a monogamous person, they only want one partner for them in that way, right? Then it gets into how do you define partner. But they only want one like romantic or sexual relationship in that way for them. That's a monogamous person. So if that is how you feel and you aren't bothered by the concept of your partner having other partners, if you even think that sounds beautiful or, like abundant love and all of that, if when you're feeling calm and regulated, that's how you feel and that's how you think, amazing. That can be something that works out long term. Absolutely. If it is not something that you want, if it is not just temporary struggle in the adjustment to change, but it is struggle at the core of, I don't want this. I feel like I'm being pushed to do this. I'm feeling like I'm being forced to do this. I feel like I have no other choice. That I've not seen go well, unfortunately. And if you resonate with that, I do wish I had better news for you, right? But like, if you don't want this for you, if you hate every minute of this, if you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel for yourself in your relationship, then it might be a bigger conversation of, are you both, again, trying to build the same future together? Are you both, is anybody settling? And that's not something that I can answer in 2 minutes, but, or that I would even know for you. You would know that for you, but it can absolutely be okay adjusting to change, but monogamous people got to unlearn mononormativity too. You got to unlearn all the monogamous scripts too. You can have only one partner and unlearn the whole like, oh, well, something must be wrong with me if my partner wants something else with the person over here, right? That's a monogamous script. Or, oh, like they're my other half and everyone else is just like, optional add-ons. Like that's a monogamous script. It's a monogamous like application to polyamory, Can we just ask if there's any should, if there's any, of course, if there's any assumption, if there's anything that's a given, can you notice it when it happens? Oh, well, I assumed it would be like this. Okay. Can we ask why? Why was that the assumption? Can they be explicit conversations, So monogamous people got to unlearn the monogamous scripts too. And if you do all the digging and you land on that same answer, fantastic. Then you've landed on your answer, which may be harmoniously in line with the norm. But when we just go sort of on autopilot on all the norms of all how we've always seen it done, we're not asking ourselves, is this really what I want? Is this really what this relationship needs? So asking ourselves that, maybe you get lucky and like it's not as much against the grain and then it's less of a struggle. But if you are landing on this as a bit against the grain, then it is some work for the monogamous person as well. But I do want to give hope. I've absolutely seen it go well, if this is not something that bothers you, or if it is even attractive to you as a concept, it's just not who you are personally. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. And bonus Q&A. So in 2 weeks, on the first Sunday of November, I will have my next questionnaire. So anybody that I wasn't able to get to today, I will roll over the questions to next time and hopefully, be able to tend to everybody's needs a bit more quickly. So you don't have to wait like months, to have your question answered. But yeah, again, if you want to chat one-on-one, chillpolyamory.com. I'm around, I'm booking. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your night. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you next time.